Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'm reviewing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So this is the fifth installment in the Indiana Jones franchise, and it takes place 12 years after the last film. In real life, it's been 15 years since we got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I was really excited to see how they were going to rejuvenate and reboot this franchise. And I have to say, at the end of the day, there's some things I really loved about this movie that reminded me of why I enjoy this franchise, and there are some things that remind me of maybe why it's been a while since we got a last movie. Start off, the plot of this movie is following Indiana Jones as he's retiring from his job at a university when he's thrown into a new adventure with his goddaughter, and they're chasing after the Dial of Destiny, Archimedes' dial. And the movie is kind of going back to basics. We have Nazis as the villains. We're chasing down an artifact. So it's getting back to the things that people loved about those first few films. That being said, by the end of the movie, we do get to almost Crystal Skull levels of ridiculousness. And I will go into a little bit of spoilers this, particularly towards the end of the film. So if you don't want to hear about anything that happens in this movie, I would click off now, come back later after you've watched it. So talking about some of the positives of this film, I actually really liked Harrison Ford coming back as Indiana Jones and playing kind of a different Indiana Jones. He's not trying to replicate who he was in those first few films. He really is an older man who is trying to struggle to find his purpose in life. He's an adventurer. He's always wanted to be that. He's kind of lost some things in his life along the way. And I like that he plays the character in that direction. But then at the same time, in the first act, we get a de-aged and CGI version of him from his heyday in 1944, where he's fighting Nazis in a Nazi castle. Everything we love about Indiana Jones. And I love that you get that in the beginning and you slowly lean into who he is as a character as the movie goes on, and you kind of get more of a character arc for him. He also feels like a very human character because he's dealing with some loss in his life, and he's dealing with kind of the twilight of his whole life. Phoebe Waller-Bridge plays his goddaughter Helena in this movie. Obviously, a lot of people know her from Fleabag, and she brings kind of that same level of acting to this movie. I didn't know what to expect from her, kind of being a new character thrown into this very established lore that we have for Indiana Jones, but I think she plays really well off of his character. Their chemistry works really well, one kind of being a very high-spirited and charismatic and kind of a trickster character, and the other one being kind of a curmudgeon and old man. So they play off each other really well, and it kind of adds to the comedy of this movie. And there is quite a bit. Obviously, in the Indiana Jones franchise, they interject some lightheartedness into the action, and it works well in this one as well. They obviously bring back the iconic John Williams score, and that does some heavy lifting in this one to really put you into the action set pieces and some of the more somber, intimate moments. It's just one of the most iconic scores of all time, so obviously it helps elevate the film a little bit. Mads Mikkelsen plays our villain in this movie, and he is born to play this kind of role. He always does a good job playing this menacing individual, and this movie's no exception to that. I will say, while I really enjoyed the action set pieces, particularly in the first two acts, some of them do drag on just a little bit too long. There's some chase scenes that feel like they're 30 minutes long. Now, obviously, they probably aren't, but when I'm sitting there in a theater, we got multiple of these really, really long action set pieces where I kind of started to drag on. I started to lose interest in that. Overall, the movie is, over 2.5 hours long, so it does feel long at times. But when it comes to the actual action itself and the choreography and the kind of the production design and even the visual effects, it all flows together really well, and you feel like you're getting what you expect from an Indiana Jones film. The first two acts are everything I kind of wanted from this movie. It was better than I could have expected, but it starts to get really off the rails by the third act, and it kind of wades into the reasons why I particularly don't love a film like maybe, The Crystal Skull, and why Temple of Doom isn't my favorite one. It gets super ridiculous, and it really, in my opinion, jumps the shark at the end. So I'll give my score right now, and then I'll go into some spoilers about the end of the film. So again, if you don't want to hear any of that, I would check off after my rating here. So if I were to rate Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I would give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. It's probably a little bit better than Crystal Skull than me. It's a little below Temple of Doom. It's not anywhere with those top tier films, and I don't think anyone really expected it ever to be that quality, but I will say there's some things about it that really displayed why I love this franchise. It really had some fun, incredible moments. Harrison Ford felt like he was really back for this one, really committed, and really the use of that de-aging and kind of having Indy in his heyday, I thought it worked great. I really love that's how it starts the film, and it really put me back into this mode of loving these movies. But again, it really starts to get really ridiculous and really over the top. And now I will go into some spoilers about the movie, particularly the third act. So when you're watching this film, they're chasing down this Archimedes dial. It has some ability to change time or travel through time, and Mads Mikkelsen is trying to take it to go back before the Germans invaded Poland and kind of take out Hitler and change the turn of the war and kind of change things so he's able to make them succeed. Essentially, he knows every mistake that was made. He wants to go back and fix it and make sure that they win the war. And he creates this miscalculation. They end up going through a time warp, and they end up back during the Battle of Syracuse involving Archimedes, where everything kind of came from, where this actual device was kind of created. And it's so crazy. The fact that they're going back in time, it didn't look bad. It wasn't even anything about the visuals of it or the events that go on with it, but it feels like the earlier Indiana Jones films. You get this like glimpse of the paranormal. You get this kind of little flicker of, is this happening? Is this real? But then in this one, you just full on get it. You get sent back there. You get to see this happen. They interact with Archimedes. And the one part that really kind of bothered me, I'm glad they decided to go a different direction, is that Indiana Jones is wounded before they end up going back in time. And he decides that he wants to stay back there. He doesn't want to come back to the modern day. He wants to stay back in ancient Greece and just learn from Archimedes, and just like that's what he wants to do. So those motivations seem bizarre from the journey that we've been on with him throughout this whole movie. And I'm glad that his goddaughter kind of stops him from doing that. And I like the true ending of the film, having him get back with his wife and kind of get past some of the issues that he has and kind of establish him back as being who he is. He's not like a shell of a man anymore. But the fact that we had that whole crazy sequence where they go back in time, it felt so crazy. I felt like it was never going to get there, or maybe we were going to get a glimpse of it, but we full on go into it and we full on jump the shark. And for me, that didn't work, but I think some people, it might work for them. I mean, I think it's one of those things where that's where you're either going to like the movie or you're not going to like the movie. It really comes down to the third act. So those are my thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Again, if you check it out, let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.